Here is something that should bother you. Every single thing you believe right now, your politics, your ethics, what counts as a good life, what you owe other people, whether free will exists, every single one of those beliefs is built on assumptions you have never examined, not because you're lazy, because no one ever handed you the tools to examine them. That is what philosophy is, not deep thoughts about the meaning of life, not bearded men on Greek hillsides arguing about nothing. Philosophy is the toolkit for auditing your own mind. It is the discipline that asks, wait, do you actually know what you think you know? And it turns out, embarrassingly often, that the answer is no. Here is what you are going to learn in the next 20 minutes. How philosophy actually works, not as trivia, but as a living method for thinking more clearly. How three massive ruptures in the history of ideas changed what humans thought was possible. What the arguments are that serious people have been having for 2,000 years and still haven't settled. And why they haven't settled, which is more interesting than any answer would be. And a framework you can actually use today to make better decisions and catch yourself being wrong before it costs you something. One more thing. Before we start, there is a question hiding underneath all of philosophy that nobody tells undergraduates until their third year. Can reason alone get you to truth? Or is the whole project built on sand? That question is going to haunt this entire video. Hold on to it, too. A philosophy degree at a U.S. university costs you 4 years and somewhere between $80,000 and $120,000. For that, you get Plato, Kant, Nietzsche, some seminars where everyone agrees loudly with each other, and a diploma that raises exactly one eyebrow at a job interview. You have 20 minutes and a Wi-Fi connection. Same ideas, sharper delivery. Welcome to Skip the Degree. Part 1, the toolkit nobody gave you. Here is the first thing philosophy teaches you, and it is genuinely disorienting. You have never seen the world directly, not once. Everything you perceive is a processed signal. Light hits your retina, gets converted to electrical impulses, gets assembled by your visual cortex, and the image your brain hands you is a reconstruction, not a recording. Philosophers knew this before neuroscientists confirmed it. Descartes, sitting in a warm room in 1641, asked, "What if everything I perceive is a sophisticated illusion?" He wasn't being dramatic, he was being precise. This is the problem of epistemology, the branch of philosophy that asks, what is knowledge? How do we get it? And can we trust it? It sounds like a word invented to intimidate you, but the question underneath it is one you have already asked, probably at 2 a.m. How do I know that what I believe is actually true, and not just what I was told? Descartes' answer was to strip everything back to zero, doubt everything that can be doubted. And he found something he couldn't doubt, the act of doubting itself. I think, therefore I am. That's the famous line, but here is what nobody tells you. It's also a trap, because it only proves that something is thinking. It doesn't prove there is a continuous unified self doing the thinking. Philosophers spent the next 3 centuries arguing about whether the I in that sentence actually exists, which is either a profound insight into the nature of consciousness or the most productive misunderstanding in intellectual history, possibly both. Before Descartes, philosophy was about the world, not the mind. The very first philosophers, the pre-Socratics, working in what is now Turkey and Greece around 600 BCE, were essentially doing physics without instruments. Thales thought everything was made of water. Heraclitus thought everything was fire. Democritus thought everything was made of tiny, indivisible particles he called atoms. He was right, roughly 2,400 years before anyone could test it. Philosophy was not separate from science then, it was the only science there was. Even today, when physicists argue about whether the universe had a beginning or what nothing means, they are doing philosophy. They just call it theoretical physics, which is a better name for grants. Here is the second foundational concept, rationalism versus empiricism, the oldest and most durable argument in epistemology, and one that maps onto debates you have every day without realizing it. Rationalists, Descartes, Leibniz, Spinoza, believed the most reliable knowledge comes from reason alone. You don't need to observe the world to know that 2 + 2 = 4. Some truths are built into the structure of thought itself. Empiricists, Locke, Hume, Berkeley, said no. The mind at birth is a blank slate. All knowledge comes from experience and the senses. There are no innate ideas. Which side is right? Both. And the tension between them drove the entire Enlightenment. One person figured out how to hold both sides at once. His name was Immanuel Kant, and he will appear properly in a few minutes because what he did in 1781 genuinely changed the shape of human thought. But first, ontology, the branch of philosophy that asks what kinds of things are real. Before you dismiss that as too abstract, consider, is a corporation real? It isn't a physical object. You can't point to Google in the way you can point to a building, and yet it signs contracts owns property and gets sued. Is a number real? You've never seen the number 7. You've seen 7 objects, but the number itself, where is it? The entire legal system depends on having an answer to what kinds of entities are real enough to have rights. The entire debate about artificial intelligence depends on what it means for a mind to exist. Ontology is not abstract, it is architecture. One more concept before we go deeper, the is/ought gap. David Hume noticed something in 1739 that seems obvious once you see it, but that people violate constantly. You cannot get an ought from an is. Facts about the world don't automatically tell you what to do. Humans evolved to compete for resources doesn't tell you that competition is good. Most people in this society believe X doesn't tell you that X is right. Every ethical argument that leaps from a description of the world to a moral conclusion is smuggling in an assumption it hasn't earned. The next time someone makes a moral argument in politics, in business, in a relationship, ask yourself, where is the bridge between the fact they're citing and the conclusion they're drawing? Usually, there isn't one. Hume called this gap his guillotine. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Part 2. The breaks that changed everything. In 1781, a 57-year-old German professor named Immanuel Kant published a book he had been working on for 11 years. The Critique of Pure Reason, 800 pages of the most difficult German prose ever written. Kant himself admitted it was unreadable, and it is probably the most important philosophical work since Plato. What did Kant do? He solved the rationalist empiricist debate, and not by picking a side, but by reframing the question. Both sides are right, and both sides are missing something. Yes, all experience comes through the senses, but the mind doesn't passively receive that experience. It actively shapes it. Space, time, cause, and effect. These aren't features of the world we discover. They are structures the mind imposes on experience in order to make sense of it. Here is the analogy. Imagine you're wearing blue-tinted glasses since birth and you've never taken them off. You wouldn't know the tinge was there. You'd think you were seeing the world as it is. According to Kant, the mind is those glasses. Space and time are the tint. The world without the tint, what he called the thing in itself, is permanently inaccessible to you. It means that science doesn't describe reality as it is. It describes reality as it appears to human minds, equipped with human perceptual hardware. We might be doing the most rigorous possible job of describing the inside of the glasses. That should feel vertiginous. That is the appropriate response. Kant didn't just change epistemology, he changed ethics too. Before Kant, most ethics was consequentialist. You judge actions by their outcomes. Kant said no, an action is right or wrong based on the principle behind it, not the consequences. He called this the categorical imperative. Act only according to principles you could will to become universal laws. Don't lie, even if lying would produce better outcomes, because a world where everyone lied whenever convenient would be incoherent. Every time you're tempted to make an exception for yourself, I'll cheat just this once. You are testing this. Ask yourself what the world looks like if everyone makes that exception. Now, if the answer is chaos, you've answered your own question. The second break, Nietzsche, 1882, and the death of God. This is the most misunderstood line in the history of philosophy. Nietzsche was not making an atheist argument. He was saying something more unsettling. The entire moral and metaphysical framework Western civilization had been built on, objective meaning, objective value, a cosmic order that rewards goodness, had already quietly collapsed, and most people hadn't noticed yet. The madman in Nietzsche's parable isn't celebrating. He is horrified. If there is no cosmic order, no objective meaning, then humans have to create meaning themselves. From nothing. Nietzsche called the person capable of doing this the Übermensch, not a physical superior being, but a psychological one. And someone who can look into the void and not flinch. Most people think Nietzsche was advocating nihilism, the belief that nothing matters. He was doing the opposite. He was describing nihilism as the disease and asking, what is the cure? The cure is creation. New values, new meaning, new ways of affirming life in the absence of a cosmic guarantee. This is either very inspiring or very exhausting depending on the day. Every time you feel that modern anxiety, the sense that the structures you were supposed to live by are hollow, that you are supposed to find your authentic self, but nobody can tell you what that means. That is Nietzsche's diagnosis in real time. He called it 2 centuries ago. He was, uncomfortably, correct. The third break, the realization that most philosophical problems are actually language problems in disguise. Ludwig Wittgenstein wrote 2 books. They directly contradict each other. Both are considered masterpieces. In his first, the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, he argued that language mirrors the structure of the world, that meaningful sentences are pictures of facts, and all philosophical confusion comes from trying to say things that cannot be said. Then, in his second book, The Philosophical Investigations, published after his death, he completely reversed course. Words don't get their meaning from pointing at things, they get their meaning from use, from the way communities of people employ them. Meaning is use is deceptively simple, but it's catastrophic for a certain kind of philosophical project. When philosophers argue about what justice really means or what consciousness really means, they may be confusing different uses of the same word and mistaking that confusion for a deep metaphysical problem. Bank means something in river bank, something else in national bank. There is no deep truth about what bank really means in the universe. There are just two language games using the same word. Wittgenstein thought most philosophical problems were like this, not real problems, but linguistic confusions. Philosophy's job is therapy, dissolving problems, not solving them. You can't spend 2,000 years trying to define justice and then have a small Austrian man tell you the whole project was a grammatical error. And yet some of those problems have quietly dissolved whenever philosophers stopped asking what things really are and started asking how the relevant concepts actually function. Now, consciousness. Philosopher David Chalmers named the hard problem in 1995, the easy problems of consciousness. How the brain processes information, integrates sensory data, controls behavior are hard, but in principle solvable by neuroscience. The hard problem is different. Why does any of this processing feel like anything? Why is there something it is like to see red rather than just wavelength detection happening in the dark? We have no idea how to answer this. Chalmers thinks it might require a revolution in our understanding of matter, that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of the universe, like mass or charge, not something produced by complex arrangements of matter. This is called panpsychism. It is not a fringe position. It means your coffee cup might have some infinitesimally tiny form of inner experience, which is either beautiful or horrifying, and I am not sure there is a third option. Now, free will. The argument in its simplest form, if the universe is governed by physical laws, if every state of the universe is determined by the previous state plus those laws, then every choice you make was determined before you were born. Your neurons fire according to physical laws. The pattern of your neurons was shaped by genetics and experience. Neither was chosen by you. So what exactly are you freely choosing? Three positions. Hard determinism, free will is an illusion. Everything was going to happen anyway. Hard determinists tend to have very efficient mornings. Libertarian free will, not the political kind, the metaphysical kind, genuine freedom exists, requiring something about the mind that escapes physical determination. It's not clear what that something could be. Compatibilism, free will, and determinism are both true, but talking about different things. Freedom is not about escaping causation, it's about which kind of cause you are. Whether your choices flow from your own values and reasoning or from external coercion. Compatibilism is the majority position among professional philosophers. It also, conveniently, preserves moral responsibility and the legal system. Whether it actually solves the problem or just redefines it away, philosophers have been arguing about that since Hume. The neuroscience evidence increasingly supports hard determinism. Your brain starts preparing for a decision before you are consciously aware of making it, sometimes by several seconds. But the practical consequences of genuinely believing in hard determinism are so enormous that most people, including most scientists, continue to operate as if free will exists. This is either wisdom or cowardice, depending on your philosophical temperament. Three ethical frameworks cover almost all serious moral thinking. Consequentialism. The right action produces the best outcomes. Deontology. Some actions are right or wrong, independent of consequences. Duties and rules are what matter. Virtue ethics, the oldest from Aristotle. What matters is character. Not what should I do, but what kind of person am I becoming? None of them consistently wins. In every moral dilemma, you can construct a case that pulls them in different directions. What moral philosophers actually do, and almost no undergraduate textbook explains this, is use all three as lenses. They check their intuition against each framework and ask, when my intuition conflicts with one and agrees with another, what does that tell me? Moral philosophy is not a calculator. It is a form of cross-examination you run on your own instincts. Every important decision you make involves an implicit theory of ethics. The only question is whether you are applying it consciously or on autopilot. Part 3, the framework that changes how you think. 2.5 millennia of philosophy. What can you actually take away? The Three Audits. Philosophy at its most useful is a form of auditing of your beliefs, your values, and your questions. Audit 1, epistemological. What do I actually know, and how do I know it? For every important belief, ask, is this a rationalist claim? It has to be true because of logic, or an empiricist claim? It's true because of evidence. And if it's empiricist, is the evidence actually good? Who collected it? What are they incentivized to conclude? Most people treat intuitions as evidence and evidence as intuitions. The epistemological audit reverses this. Your intuitions are hypotheses, not conclusions. Running this audit honestly is slightly disturbing. Most people find that a significant fraction of their confident beliefs are held on very thin grounds: tradition, in-group consensus, or sheer repetition. Philosophy doesn't tell you which beliefs to discard. It tells you which ones need work. Audit 2, ethical. What framework am I actually using? Most people, when facing a moral decision, will apply whichever framework favors what they already wanted to do. The ethical audit asks, am I reasoning toward a conclusion or from one? If you work backward from here is what I wanted to do to here is why it's justified, you are not doing ethics. You are doing retrospective rationalization wearing ethics coat. The corrective? Run your decision through all three frameworks. If all three agree, proceed. If they conflict, and they will, you have found the actual moral tension, which is more useful than a clean answer. Audit 3, linguistic. What am I actually asking? Before you get 3 hours into an argument, stop and ask, are we arguing about the same thing? Do we mean the same thing by the words we are using? Most sustained arguments are not about disagreements over facts or values. They are about people using the same word to mean different things. Freedom, fairness, success, love. Almost every heated argument you have ever had about these words was, in part, a language game problem. Wittgenstein's gift is not that it resolves disagreements, it is that it helps you locate them correctly so you can actually make progress. Can reason alone get you to truth? The answer philosophy lands on is no, but it is the best instrument we have. Reason is subject to cognitive bias, motivated reasoning, and the limits Kant identified. But abandoning reason doesn't produce freedom from error. It produces error without accountability. A person who refuses to reason rigorously doesn't arrive at truth by instinct. They arrive at whatever they already believed, dressed up as intuition. The value of philosophy is not certainty. It is structured uncertainty, knowing the shape of what you don't know, learning to hold conflicting ideas without flinching. In a world that rewards confident simplicity and punishes nuance, that skill is rarer and more valuable than almost anything you can learn. One final thing, Eudaimonia, Aristotle's word for the good life, which doesn't quite translate as happiness, but more like flourishing. Every philosophical tradition has answered it differently. The Stoics, a good life governed by reason and virtue, indifferent to external fortune. The Epicureans, maximum tranquility, minimum unnecessary pain. Kant, governed by duty, regardless of outcome. Nietzsche, a life that says yes to existence, including its suffering, and creates meaning rather than waiting for it. What all of them agreed on, every philosopher who disagreed violently about almost everything else, is this. An unexamined life is a smaller life, not necessarily an unhappy one, but smaller. Less precisely what you actually want, more a reflection of what you were handed. Philosophy is the tool that makes the examination possible. You are handed a set of beliefs, a set of values, a set of questions you are allowed to ask. Philosophy says, put them on the table. Keep the ones that survive the audit, revise the ones that don't, and then go live with more intention than you would have otherwise. That is not a small thing. You now understand the difference between epistemology, ontology, and ethics, and why that distinction matters for every argument you'll ever have. You understand Kant's Copernican revolution, that the mind doesn't discover the world, it partly constructs it. You understand Nietzsche's actual diagnosis, not nihilism, but its antidote. You understand the hard problem of consciousness, the free will debate, and the 3 audits framework you can run on any belief, decision, or argument today. That is 4 years of a philosophy degree. The arguments, the traditions, the uncomfortable questions they actually wrestle with in seminar rooms. In 20 minutes, skip the degree. Here is the most philosophical sentence you will hear today. The point of philosophy is not to have the right answers. It is to be the kind of person who knows which questions to take seriously. Every video on this channel exists because someone once charged 4 years of your life to teach you something that can be taught in 20 minutes. If you care enough about the person you're teaching to do it right. If that trade sounds fair to you, the subscribe button is right there. Not because you'll like the next video, because the next video will teach you something you didn't know you needed, the same way this one did. See you there.